Thank you, Janice and Kim and the entire team at Humanitarian Usls for inviting me here. Good afternoon. Before I start, I really want to say that it's a great pleasure to be here today. Just 2 years ago, I was seated in the audience in Bangkok, Thailand, at USLS, listening to inspirational humanitarians speak about their journey. And I consider this an honor to be able to revisit and share my journey since then with you all. There's so much momentum in this room, and as much as I hate to say it, I'm going to say that that's not going to be enough to make a change in the world. If you have a smartphone, please raise your hand. All right, that's what I expected. Almost all of us have smartphones. It is said that the smartphones in our pockets today carry much more technology than the Apollo 11 spacecraft. And mind you, the Apollo 11 spacecraft took humans to the moon. Now, raise your hand again if you track your social impact using your smartphone. Again, that's what I thought. The smartphones in our pockets can do so many things, but for some reason, the volunteerism industry has not done a great job in enabling people like you and me around the world to use technology to create social impact. 2 years ago, fooled by the speech done by Geraldine Cox, and now you know why, at USLS 2017, I embarked on a journey to establish a tech nonprofit called IVolunteer International. Today, it is a registered tech nonprofit in the US and has a gold seal for transparency by GuideStar. Our goal is to create 7 billion volunteers. And I'm serious because we are counting. In 2015, I got the opportunity to study in the United States through a Rotary scholarship program called the Georgia Rotary Student Program. My new hometown was Savannah, Georgia. When I went to Savannah, I was an alien to the city. I didn't know many people, surely didn't know anyone at school, and had no idea what the community was like. So I did what I did best. I found volunteer opportunities to get involved around the community, and after 4 years, I can tell you all about Savannah and the state of Georgia. I know people from all walks of life. I know Savannah's history, and I'm an embedded contributor to the Savannah's growth. I know yesterday a delegate asked a question, how do you connect with communities that were historically undermined? You volunteer in their community in causes that are important to them. How do you connect to people in different communities to understand what they need? You volunteer in their community. Volunteerism is a vehicle of hope that we carry with us. Volunteerism is one of the tools that you and I can use to reach people that don't think like us and that don't look like us at all. When you're a volunteer, political, religious, and economic barriers fall down because volunteerism is how we connect to a common social good. I was born and raised in beautiful and resilient Sri Lanka. Although the concept of volunteerism exists there, we don't really treat it like a sideline activity. Volunteering, taking care of our communities, coming together for events that help others is actually a part of our culture, and I know a lot of people here can resonate to that. But when I went to the United States, I had a hard time finding volunteer opportunities. So I had my wait what moment, as Chris Temple put it yesterday. 7 billion people in the world, but not so much even as a quarter of that identifying themselves as a volunteer. When people come together as volunteers to take action in their own local community, it contributes to the resilience of those communities. When people take action together at home, it contributes to sustainability, understanding, and unity. And these are not just my words. The 2018 State of the World's Volunteerism Report published by the United Nations volunteers show this data, and this is true. It enables those communities to find solutions that fit them together. Like Chris Temple mentioned yesterday, the poor found a solution to invest in themselves by creating microfinancing options. So now imagine 7 billion people taking action in their own communities to enable growth, to achieve equality, to attain sustainability, to tackle climate change, and to accomplish the Sustainable Development Goals. Like Felipe mentioned yesterday, internal challenges don't have external solutions. It needs to come from within. But it's not as easy as I say. At IVolunteer International, we conducted research to see why we don't have 7 billion volunteers in the world. That was the first question we had. Why aren't all of us taking action in our communities? Here are the 3 major challenges we found. First, most of us are already fully committed to something. That's not rocket science. We go to school full-time, work full-time, so we don't have the time. A majority of volunteer opportunities come from established organizations, and they require weekly, monthly, recurring commitments. People can't be involved in one organization and attend weekly or recurring meetings because they simply don't have the time. So this leaves a bigger proportion of any society's population out of volunteering. Second, whenever there's a volunteer opportunity, there is some kind of cost associated with it. It could be membership fees you have to pay to the organization, cost of transport, paying for t-shirts. I know many of you are nodding heads, so you understand. Because of this, in each community, a huge population of potential volunteers are left out because they simply can't afford it. The third is the knock on the head. Even if people had the time, and even if they had the money, there isn't a single global platform that connects people to volunteer projects in their local communities in real time. I know this question came up so many times yesterday. How can I help? Where can I help? What can I do to help? These questions come as a result of this third problem. So in order to eradicate these challenges, IVolunteer International wanted to develop a geo-connecting mobile application for the world's volunteers to use. Since 2017, right after USLS, we have been developing our organization and the technology, and I'm happy to say that our launch will actually happen early next year. So far, without the mobile application, and just by working with our partners worldwide, we have mobilized over 4,000 people in their local communities around the world to take action. So here's how it will work. The mobile app will identify the user's live location and show you volunteer projects around you. Pretty simple. You can sign up for projects, and when you attend them, you can confirm your attendance, and it will track your volunteer hours and social impact. The best part is, you, as an individual, can post your own project in your community, and people around you will be connected to your project. We will also have profiles for businesses so that they can keep track of their volunteers, their hours, and their impact in the world, and all that data will allow them to read their social impact to the world. We aren't reinventing the wheel. There are volunteer connectivity platforms in the world already. Volunteer Match in the USA, doit.org in UK, and Good People in Sri Lanka are similar platforms. And when we launch, we will reach out to them as collaborators for enhanced impact. But we aren't just creating a tool. We are cultivating a brand, a culture, an idea. Over the last 2 years, we have reached out around the world, partnered with nonprofits, NGOs, and local communities to mobilize people and enable them to create change. And I'm going to go off script a little bit here. IVolunteer International started as a Facebook page with 1 like 2 years ago. So if you want to create change, I know we want to create change tomorrow. I know we want to change a lot of lives tomorrow. That's just not, at least in my experience, how it works. It starts small. It starts with you, and it starts in your local community. Remember I said there's so much momentum here and in this room, and I said that's not enough? That's because this journey here was not easy at all. I'm going to be very honest. Hundreds of people did not reply back to us when we started. We were left high and dry. High-level organizations that promoted youth action on social media brought us to the table and left us hanging. People didn't believe anything, and hope was crushed. But that's the part of the journey. That's what all the speakers have been speaking about it here today and yesterday. That's what Geraldine spoke about as well, persistent. We persisted. So momentum isn't enough, my dear friends. To take action, young people can't be sitting and listening. We need to be up and fighting with fire in our hearts and passion in our hands. You need to have agility and perseverance, because as hard as it is, you and I need to realize we can't change 1 million lives tomorrow. We need to start with the person sitting right next to you, because by embracing your reach and giving the small amount of commitment, your best effort, is how you and I will create a world we want to see. So when you go back with USLS, with all these friends from around the world, be a volunteer and join the movement of of world's volunteers to create change. Thank you.
Your name of your apps, and can you give your account IG to follow?
Wait, I didn't understand that. Account ID?
Account.
Oh, Instagram? Okay,
yes.
so sorry. The organization is called IVolunteer International, and the Instagram account ID is @IVolunteer INT. IVolunteer INT is used on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, so if you type that, you'll get the ID. The product name is also going to be called IVolunteer. We're planning for a January launch next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can we have the next questions over here?
Okay, hi. Thank you both, Jack and Nipuna, for your very interesting stories and inspiring volunteering opportunities. So my question is, or actually it's a thought that I have, and I want to get your thought on this phrase. I believe that social responsibility and social entrepreneurship should not be patented or exclusive. So, for example, Jack, you mentioned the idea of establishing computer labs in rural areas where they lack of it. So I'm pretty sure that there will be people among the audience who think, oh, that was a good idea. But the problem was because they'll think, oh, Jack already did that, so I should look for something else. I believe personally that, no, this should not be the case, and it actually should be that, okay, Jack did Lighthouse, but maybe someone else could do the same thing with a different name because the world needs it and Jack alone cannot do it. So I would like the input of both of you on that thought. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Nipuna and I were actually just talking about before our session about the difference between the profit sector and the not-for-profit sector. If this was a profit sector, Nipuna and I would be sitting here now, I would still be at the lectern, competing, saying, I don't want him to get any limelight, because we'd see each other as rivals. But honestly, we're all here for a common goal. And I really stumbled across the idea of providing digital learning opportunities for children. It wasn't something that I knew was going to happen when I was inspired at the last Usls. So I think it's something that I just took the opportunity of, and collaboration is the most powerful tool that we have, because, like we say, none of us can change the world. Even Geraldine, you know, she's an icon, really, of humanitarianism, and she admits openly that she cannot change the world. So I think it's a really good point that you raised there, that it's not about market space or these sort of things like that. It's about, let's fill that market, get it done, and move on to the next one. So it's a really good point.
Does it answer your questions? Right? Okay, thank you. May we have this lady here? Thank you.
My name's Kelly. I'm from the University of Technology, Sydney, Australia. My question is for Jack. You spoke about the power of opportunities and how you needed to take chances to kind of make the most of them. What specifically, for you, did you find were the opportunities and chances that you took in order to expand to, 3 different countries and so many people?
Yeah, look, the first thing you have to do in Australia if you want to found a not-for-profit is have a board. And there has been times where my board has looked at me and gone, are you serious? Like, are we going to do this now? But I think it's just having ambition, and but also understanding that the intention to help, you actually bind yourself in a contract. So I mentioned that I had the national media interview me, and they said, and I made this promise on the spot to give 12 laptops. Well, to me, the next, it was 2 days later, it ended up in the national newspaper on the front page. And to me, that becomes a contract then with the people of Kuta. So it's, I suppose I took the opportunity, but then it also comes with responsibility. The whole theme of my speech was that our generation has unparalleled opportunities, but with that also comes responsibilities. And the same thing goes with trying to have an impact on people. It comes with challenges, and it also comes with responsibility as well. Does that answer your question, or?
Thank you, Jack. And may we have the delegates over here?
Hello, I'm Janie, and I'm from Waikato University in New Zealand. My question is for Nipuna. I was wondering, you said you want to engage 7 billion people in volunteering worldwide. My question is, how do you expect that to happen in integrating these ecosystems of people? And what kind of volunteering have you done, and what opportunities have you taken? Thank you.
So, in Sri Lanka, personally, about my volunteer experiences, one of the things that really hit me to get other people to connect to volunteer opportunities is when I went to the US and when I went for a lot of opportunities like professional opportunities, they asked me how many volunteer hours I have. And I didn't know what volunteer hours were because we never counted them in Sri Lanka. It was a part of our culture, and I was like, volunteer hours? So I was like, wait, do people actually collect volunteer hours? And then I like spoke to my friends, like, how many volunteers do you have? Like, yeah, 20 hours, you know, like stuff like that. So I actually haven't like had a list ever of like volunteer opportunities. Some of the things that I can say from personal experience is every Sunday, all the kids get together on the small lane in Sri Lanka that we had, and we'd clean the road. We'll cut the grass or the ground that we play in. Those are volunteer opportunities, but we got together as a community, and Sunday was like a to-do list every Sunday, you know. So there were some of the things that that we did that kind of like reciprocated as volunteer opportunities. When it comes to 7 billion people, it's going to be a progression because there's going to be a lot of challenges because out of the 7 billion people, not everybody is actually able to be volunteers in itself. There'll be infants counted in that account as well. And there's also people who are still trying to get access to smartphones. So it's not going to be, again, like an overnight thing. It's not going to be in January when we launch the app. By February, we're not going to have 7 billion people. It's going to be years, but my goal is that my nonprofit in years to come will cease to exist because we would have achieved our goal. So we, in the nonprofit sector, I believe, we are working to get rid of our jobs.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And may we take the next questions here?
Hi, my name is Omar. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. And my question goes to Jack. You mentioned that you've integrated to Papua New Guinea, to Uganda and Pakistan as well. I'm curious to know, how did you manage to integrate into countries that are quite foreign to you? And more importantly, what was your largest challenge?
So I'll just clarify, probably about 90% of our work happens in Papua New Guinea along the digital learning theme, and then it comes back to opportunities again. I had people contact me over Facebook that were running their own initiatives in Uganda and Pakistan, and seriously, the person from Pakistan, I could talk about her for 3 hours. I was really inspired. And so that was a real gamble, I guess, and I really relied on the person in country, my in-country partner, to do that. As for Papua New Guinea, it's a little bit different. We truly see ourselves as part of Papua New Guinea. We've been welcomed into the community. We stay in the community. We sleep on the ground. We eat with the locals. And I truly do rely and depend on a gentleman named Peter, who's a local councillor in Papua New Guinea. So probably to answer your question, it's really about, I mean, Nipuna talks about volunteering in your own community. I suppose when you operate across borders, like you're saying, it does present some great challenges, and really every day is a challenge because you have to remind yourself that development should be done not for people but with people. And so always recognizing that the greatest strength you have is your relationship with your in-country partner is probably the most important learning I've got from global development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can we take the next questions here?
Hi, my name is Charlie from Korea, and thank you very much. I'm really inspired by the fact that you were here 2 years ago, and now you're here making impact. So I have one for Zach, one for IVolunteer as well. The first question would be, how did you make your initiative sustainable? More specifically, you started with giving out computers to the people who has never touched a computer in their life, and now you gave them technology, method to keep learning, which didn't finish at just giving computers. So how did you manage that?
Well, we actually we identified that giving technology to people who had never even seen a laptop was obviously going to be an enormous challenge. I spoke before about the responsibility you have in development. If you're going to start something and build on that intention, you have to have go through on your responsibility of ensuring that you get a successful outcome out of it. And so the teachers that are teaching the students on our laptops, they didn't know how to use technology, obviously. So I produced a illustrative guide of how to, the basic skills guide of operating a laptop, and it started with literally opening the laptop. And that was one of the biggest challenges for me because I've grown up with digital literacy, to actually go back to the start and see it from someone's perspective that is so foreign. It was a real challenge, but anyway, we put that together and we actually got it translated into Pidgin, the language of Papua New Guinea. And so that's been, the feedback we've gotten from communities has been, that's been a great asset as well. So I think a learning out of that is that you start something, you have a go, but then you learn as you go as well. And that's the most important thing, is to keep your eyes open at all times.
Thank you. So one for up and up as well. So yesterday, Philip has mentioned there is huge proportion of people, communities, which doesn't have access to those technology or smartphone to reach out for volunteering or post your volunteering opportunities. Is there any plan, or has there been effort to incorporate those people into the table as well?
Yes, so I actually expected this question, so I wrote it down because I couldn't bring the report. Before we launched IVolunteer, we did a lot of research, right? Especially to figure out why we don't have 7 billion volunteers. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to keep the app lightweight. And I'll basically tell everyone here, I don't have a technology background, but I serve as the executive director for Tech Nonprofit. So let that sink in a little bit. I have one of my great friends, Akash, who is the CTO of the organization, running a team of developers and who are actually developing the app. I just had the vision and the idea. So one of the things that we're trying to do is keep the app very lightweight so that you don't need a lot of bandwidth to support it. And one of the things that we know in Statista, the statistics that in 2015, there was about 52.7% of smartphone users accessing the internet and other apps around the world. And in 2018, that figure was 61.2%. So we see a growth in smartphone usages and using smartphones specifically to access the internet and other apps. There's not going to be anything that we expect to do that will drive up that increase in smartphone usages. But I sure do hope that anywhere in the world that smartphone is used to access the internet, we'll try to get in there and to make sure that they have access to the mobile app. But it's going to be a learning curve, and it's going to be a ladder we're going to have to climb.
Thank you.
Thank you. May you take the next questions here?
Okay. Hi, first of all, you have very interesting stories that, inspire us to be more creative in our specific fields. And second, it was an honor to be your sitmate on lunch earlier, Nipuna. And my question is for you as well. I'm Liz from the Philippines, and in the Philippines, a huge chunk of the youth are active members of social media. Philippines is enormous on Facebook, on Twitter, on all the hashtags and all the technology stuff. For some reason, it's an identity Philippines has. So it would be very interesting that your technology app is dwelling on the importance of measuring your social impact. And I think it would be very interesting for the Filipino youth who like to engage, to stand on issues. But this time, using the IVolunteer, they could track their social impact and not just, not be strategic in how they engage. So I would like to know if you could expound more how you would be measuring the social impact. Would it be like a quantified thing or a qualitative thing whatsoever?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our analytics section actually includes 3 major levels of social impact collection, and then it drives down to 18 subsections. To be very honest with you, I don't remember the 18 subsections off the top of my head, but I do remember the main 3. So one of the things that we'll be tracking is labor hours donated. So when we started developing the app, we realized that there is no universal metric to kind of assess how much of a volunteer social impact somebody has done. So we are building in-house metrics for this. So we're going to come up with and this is a very dangerous zone, we're going to come up with a universal labor hours donated metrics so that we can accompany to different countries according to the mobility, according to cost of living and economic mobility, so that we can actually assess labor hours donated. Okay, this is how many labor hours donated you've into the country. We're also incorporating SDGs into it. So you will know what SDGs and what kind of proportion. So if you have volunteered for the past 2 months, how has your SDG distribution has been, so that you can tell somebody, hey, look, I've been interested in education, right, or zero hunger, and this is 21% of my past 2 years' month have been donated to that. So those are some of the metrics that we're building so that you have something on your social media. And don't get me wrong, we want you to create awareness on social media. One of the things that we're trying to integrate is that you can boast about it in social media. Yeah. You should be able to put it on Twitter and say, hey, I volunteered this much last week. So those are great things. Mm-hmm. We just don't want our users to have the perception that when they put a Facebook post, it stops there because there's so much more to do.
Yeah, same. That's a very nice perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. You take the next questions here.
Hi, my name is Elise from the University of Newcastle. My question is for Jack. As a mathematics teacher and I do research in quality teaching, I'm really interested in digital technologies being implemented into classrooms. So the last question was kind of my question, but how do you measure your outcomes so you know that you're creating that quality classroom environment?
I think that certainly comes back to capacity, and at the moment, like I said, we are certainly an amateur outfit. We're working on some intern positions in the next few months. Some of them will be for operations tasks like our social media, managing all the boring stuff. But we're also looking at some positions for Papua New Guineans to actually, if they're based in Port Moresby, to head into the rural areas and assist with the teaching, but I suppose also do some evaluation work as well. But it is an interesting question, and I suppose it's something that we're probably not old enough yet to be able to see the impact. Yes, there's been 6,000 students that have been given access to digital learning tools, but I suppose until a few more years go by and we can start to see the real tangible outcomes where those students are transitioning into higher education where there is technology and they have a distinct advantage, I suppose you can look for a quantitative component there. But then there's also the other part of it, which is inspiring minds. And that there, it's amazing how the digital learning aspect is more of a legacy thing, and the inspiring minds, you can never quantify that. It's something that you feel when you're amongst there, and you see it when you're watching the videos. So I suppose with the digital learning aspect of it, we do want to get something like Nipuna's talking about in terms of a quantitative matrix. That will come, but I don't think you'll ever be able to quantify the inspiration. It's a special quantity, a special substance.
Yeah, absolutely. Quantitative and qualitative come hand in hand.
Yeah, definitely.
Hi Jack, I'm Puna. My name is Kate and I'm from Malaysian Technical University. Firstly, I'm very impressed because both of you connect the technologies with communities around the world. And my question, I have two questions. One for Puna. And you are creating a website, something like applications for all over the world to use to join the volunteers and offer the volunteers. I want to ask, have you ever feel fear if your application does not success, and how do you take a measure to take the risk if you're not success with the applications? And second one is for the Jack. Have you thought to have any collaboration with Puna, because both of you have same mission and vision in volunteerism? Thank you.
He is my roommate, so we'll probably talk about that later.
Yeah. And we were just talking about it before we got on stage. But to answer your question, yes. Every day I think about what will happen if the app doesn't work. Not because I am really going to lose anything, because I've put my heart and soul into it and I don't regret a single moment working on it, even if it doesn't work out starting tomorrow. What the biggest fear, to be honest, is what am I going to tell the donors? Because a lot of people have invested a lot of money on this app. And that's, I think what keeps me going. What the fear comes from the accountability to the money, because now I, just like Jack mentioned on the newspaper, now I feel like I have a contract with the donors. But what keeps me going is the stories that come. You realize the 4,000 odd people that we have mobilized in their communities have done projects, about 80 of them, in their local communities, and my team and I are sitting behind computers in the US. It's from Sri Lanka to Australia to, there was a project in Malaysia. There are so many projects going on around the world that we're supporting with volunteers. All of us are just sitting behind laptops. So that power of technology is what keeps us motivated. It's that when we change things on the website, it changes things to people in a different community. So that keeps us driving, and whenever we portray this idea and hope to the world, to our donors and our supporters, they have come on board 100%. So there's always that risk. I am a very visual person, and when I started this, I had the idea, but I was scared to jump, and I told a couple of my friends before Geraldine's speech in 2017, I had the idea, I had a half-made plane, I was scared to jump off the cliff because I wasn't sure if I'll be able to make the plane when I got to the ground. But after that story, I thought, I'll just see it. and I jumped. I'm still on the way, making the plane. It's looking good, but at the end of the day, if I hit rock bottom and without a fully done plane, it's fine. We'll start from the beginning, I guess.
Yeah, just on that as well, it's like Nipuna said there, I mean, it could just fail tomorrow in the eyes of some people, but there's 4,000 people there that are now on a journey. And so that culture's been instilled in 4,000 people. And for me, the moment that I realized there's no more failure is I was laying in my room in India on an internship, and I received some photos from our dear friend in Pakistan. Basically, what we do in Pakistan is we send boxes of stationery and basic learning materials to her, and she runs a small school on rooftops and in like paddocks and things like that. And I said, you know, some people have got behind this, so if you can get some photos of what that presentation looked like, it'll be amazing. And so she sent me about 38 photos or something like that. But there's one photo in particular that out of all of the moments I've had, that just left me really speechless. And it was a 5-year-old girl, and she was crying. She had the notebook with her, and she said that she didn't say this, but you could tell that she understood the gravity of what she'd just been given. It was a 48-page notebook. There's some here on the tables now. There's probably 100 in the room. But to her, it was the only thing that she'd ever owned in her life, and it stood for something. And for a 5-year-old girl to realize that, she said in her message that she wants to grow up one day and work for Lighthouse and help other girls like her. There's no failure now. We've done something. We've inspired someone, and that's a win. So.
Thank you, Jack and Nipuna. Really, you know, like whatever things that you guys have in fear in terms of mistake or failure, there's never mistake or failure. There's only lesson to be learned. So we're all learning from this lesson from their journeys, okay? All right, maybe take the next question, Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe, and I'm from the University of Technology, Sydney, but also from the Philippines and Australia. First of all, I'd like to thank you guys for sharing your story, and well done on the startups. I'm studying the Bachelor's of Entrepreneurship Honours, and startups are very hard. And in particular, social entrepreneurship is very difficult, right? You guys have made an impact, and that's obvious. What I want to know is, the question for both of you is, what is the biggest failure you guys both had, and how did you guys deal with it?
So, I'll actually go first if you don't mind. I think the biggest failure is on the app side of things, right? The social enterprise, is that I was not able to start the organization in Sri Lanka. It was my dream to start the organization in Sri Lanka because that's where I was born and raised. I was only in the US for 4 years. But to register, we've spent a lot of time and money, and everything was unsuccessful. For like 6 months, we dragged it through the dirt. There was no support, and it was chaos. And then I got the, I went back to, I was in the US at the time, and then I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll register in the US. And that went through really fast because of the systems that were in place. So I will, although we'll take the app worldwide, I think that's one of the biggest regrets I've had, where I wasn't able to start the nonprofit in Sri Lanka.
Sorry. Yeah, I would just keep with the theme of the whole day. The general consensus has been that failure doesn't exist. So I'm going to talk about it as a learning, perhaps because really nothing as terrible has gone wrong yet, thank God. But a learning for me would be when you're the driver of this movement, you're constantly trying to succeed, and success, its definition can sometimes change. And you have to always remember why you started it. And that's something that Dad's reminded me of quite often, is that you have to remember why you started it. And the best way to do that is to stay connected to the impact itself. So I was just saying to Janice before we mic'd up, is I'm really lucky that I get to visit Papua New Guinea. I'm going there in 2 weeks, and I get to be back amongst people again. We've got 3 presentations where there's 1,000 people will come out for the community and give up their day to really, in all honesty, I think it's just bask in a moment of happiness. And so being able to regularly go up there and stay involved and remember why you're doing it, that's a learning for me. And perhaps there's been times where the goalposts have just moved a little bit, but thankfully I've come back and seen why I'm doing it.
Thanks for that, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We have the next questions, please.
Hi, my name is Chia. I'm from Malaysia, and I'm studying in the University of Queensland in Australia. Sorry to challenge the core spirit of this conference, but there's this saying that goes, if you are young and not a socialist, you have no heart. If you are old and not a capitalist, you have no brain. So from one young person to another young person, this saying is not without reason, nor is it without wisdom. So what are your thoughts on this?
So I think when you're helping somebody, it needs to be unconditional. So I know what you're meaning about, with the sarcasm and everything that's in that code. I think that proposition of trying to put somebody in a category can actually hurt us more than help us. Something that I realized was I came from Sri Lanka and went to the US to study. And when I went to the US, I was like, hey, you're Asian, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's true, I'm Asian. But I never thought I was Asian when I was in Asia. But when I went to the US, everyone was like, hey, where are you from? Because, the United States has people from everywhere. So that's a common thing to ask, hey, where are you from, Even sometimes, even the answer is America. So I think that's one of the things that I'll tell you. When you're helping somebody, it's not because you know them, it's because they're another human being, and you don't wish upon them anything that you don't wish upon yourself. And that needs to be unconditional. It's not what I'm going to get out of it. It's that the good you do to society is going to do good to you. That's because you're a contributor to it, and that's how I believe it.
I think I'll just build on that as well and say that I think I mentioned the opportunities that our generation has. I just see it as it all centers on a paradigm shift. I see people here. You're here because you want to make a difference, and that's enough. That's it. The currency of inspiration is enough. And so I think that we are changers of state, all of us. And I just think that going forward, I think impact and inspiration and positive outcomes will be seen as a currency itself.
Well said, thank you.
And volunteering is also like an idea, You can't be a great volunteer and a great humanitarian if you go to some project and volunteer and you come back home and you're very, you're very bad to your brother or sister, and you go to school and bully somebody, and you go to the restaurant and scream at the, waiter. You are a good person because it's inside you, and that can't change when you're at a volunteer project or when you're at home, when you're at school. It's a personality that you develop inside. So that's why I mentioned that IVolunteer is not just connecting volunteers, we're creating a brand and a culture, because I just don't want people to go to a project and go home. We want to change them in being better people.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We take the next questions here.
Hi guys, my name's Seema. I'm from the Edith Cowan University from Western Australia. Well done, Jack and Nipuna, on taking initiative and establishing an innovative idea and bringing it to life. My question is for you, Nipuna. What is the security of your app like? From my understanding, anyone can apply for this app and sign up and become a member and do events. So in terms of security, in a country like Australia, it's relatively safe to go out and do, volunteering. All you need is probably working with children's check and a national police check. But when it comes to countries where human trafficking is quite common, how would the app ensure that there's a safety screening system to make that, safe for everyone to use?
That's an amazing question. We're actually developing those right now. One of the things that came to the conversation right off the bat was privacy. Not just of the people who are, not just the legitimacy of the users who's holding the phone, but when users log in and create an account, how are we going to secure their privacy? And what type of information will the host organization have access to when they sign up for projects? And all sorts of legal, like GDPR, things come to mind. So we're analyzing that right now when trying to put a framework. Couple of things that we've taken into account is Apple actually gave us a great tool. If you're signing up using your emails, emails won't be visible to hosts or app developers. Like we won't have your email in the back end because it's going to be encrypted now with the new Apple update. So those are some of the tools that we are going to incorporate on our app. We are going to make it, even on the website right now, we have made it clear that when people volunteer for those projects, they actually volunteer at their own risk. Only because right now we can't look at all the people who are volunteering on our website because we don't have that capacity on our website. When we transfer to a mobile app, we will use authentication sections like two-factor authentication, email authentications, and in countries that we need, even ID authentications, so that we can give those information to the host organization. But the clear pathway is when a user signs up for a project, we don't do anything to the process to get them from point A to point B. We actually provide those details to the organization. It's the sole authority of the organization to engage that volunteer or not. So let's say as an example, if you're working with children, some of the organizations require background checks. We won't be doing the background checks for the organization. We will just basically provide the information of the volunteers to the organization using an app. And anything else after that they want to do, like get their t-shirt sizes, tell them the dates changed, tell them that they need high boots to wear, is all going to be the organization's responsibility.
Okay, but if, say for example, an individual wanted to host a volunteering event and wanted to get a group of people together, how would the security of that individual or the people that are going to be joining in going to be taken into consideration?
So there's going to be, if information needs to be shared, there's going to be in-app messaging on the app itself. But it's going to be when they sign up for the project, when they sign up and make a user account, that's where they'll be tallied on their ID. So email authentications, ID authentications, the location authentications, those are the ones that's going to...
Sorry, I think you're misunderstanding my question. My question is, as in, if someone was to volunteer and these are a group of strangers that are coming together, how would you ensure that none of them are a rapist, a sex offender, or a criminal of some sort that will put you at risk or put the organization at risk, is my question.
Okay, I understand your question now. So you're basically saying that let's say I have an account, right? But I have a criminal history. That doesn't stop me from creating an account. You have created a project happening tomorrow, and I'm coming there, and it's not safe for me to come there. That's what you're saying. How is that block going to happen?
Yes.
So I don't have an answer to that. Because
probably worth looking into, right?
Yeah, it will be. So because just off the top of my head of all the conversations we've had, thoughts are streaming in, and I'm thinking we can't restrict the access, but we have to take into account the safety of the people who are going to be at those events as well. So that's one of the things that we look into. One of the conversations we have had regarding background checks and things like that is to possibly incorporate a third party into the app later on when we develop. So the first phase is coming out in January, but we have 3 phases coming out where we'll put organizational accounts as well. When we do that, maybe we'll hire a third party and do background checks of all the people who sign up on the app in different countries that we can afford it. That conversation has happened so that we can have different notifications. But it goes on the other side where if I have a criminal record and it's like, something very small, it's going to be how we treat that individual in allowing them access to be in the community after all. So that's a safe line we want to tread on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Huda. I'm from Nottingham University in the UK. So my question is to Nipuna. So we know when we talked about reaching out to partners and not hearing back from them, was that only like by emailing them, or did you have to travel? Because obviously connecting with international organizations and sort of meeting them, explaining your idea, giving a presentation, and they kind of get on board with you.
So more than I've known and more than you'll ever know, many organizations have a lot of restrictions in what they can do. I've learned it the hard way. So it could be they're striving to do something, but they really can't. So those are some of the challenges that we've had. We've reached out to a lot of organizations through contacts. I have a global network through Rotary and Rotaract. They've been really great and helpful. And conferences like this connect me to a lot of people and people in my organization as well. So we've reached out to people through contacts. And the biggest problem we've had is, you realize right now when I'm selling IVolunteer International to a donor and getting the support, I don't have a product in my hand. It's coming out in January. So I'm selling an idea. So that has been one of the things that has been driving people away from it, because as I mentioned, hope is the thing that always gets crushed. Mostly it's people that have invited us to do a presentation or something, and then we want to partner up with them, and they're like, you know what, like your session is done, so there's nothing for you to do here, kind of thing. Those are the ones that really hurt you because you really think that there's going to be action after the conversation. So, but you learn it the hard way. People are going to turn their backs on you, but as much as they do that, there's going to be other people who will look at you and support you. So.
Okay, and if you sort of like reach out to them, do you go for an established sort of program, or do you suggest a program for them? So you go to a company or like an organization that doesn't have a volunteer program and you suggest one and then get them on board, or do you go to ones that already have ones and just put them on your list?
We don't suggest any programs. Right. So organizations need to have their own programs, and we just connect them volunteers. We don't give them new programs, but it's mostly some organizations have already invested a lot of money in some sign-up forms on a website that they just want to change, don't want to change. And so we try to tell them, look, this is going to make your volunteers more efficient. This is going to make, this is going to give you a lot of time so that you can spend that on actually programs. And getting more people in your local community will gather you more support. So those are some of the selling points that we say you need to use our platform.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have the next question.
Hi, I'm Jen from Temasek Polytechnic. So thank you for sharing your inspiring story, but I have just a question for both of you. Is that if volunteering in a local community, do you think it's better to, you know, do it on a one-time basis or continuation, like maybe once a year or twice a year, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think definitely the latter. I mean, it's a lot of what we've spoken about today and what Geraldine talks about. She tells a narrative, and volunteering can be a journey. You would have heard Nipuna use the word journey. I think it's a two-way exchange, and it's certainly some of the greatest friendships I have are from people that have, for me it's different. We do a lot of our work in Papua New Guinea, but I have some lifelong friends from there. I think when you're in an atmosphere of generosity, you can, I think a lot of barriers drop and you become really good friends. So I think when I arrive at the airport, one of the most satisfying parts of my whole time in Papua New Guinea is shaking Peter's hand again. And he says, "You're back again." They can't believe that I've come back 7 times. So that's part of the intrinsic benefit of establishing a long relationship. So I definitely say repeat efforts, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, okay, let me take the next question.
Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm from the University of Canberra Refugee Action Club in Australia. My question's to Nipuna, and it's really more about research methods. Considering your potential reach is going to be global, how did you go about finding a meaningful sample of people in order to identify barriers to volunteering and activism action?
So we haven't had a perfectly representative sample of the whole world. How we reached out was through Rotaract, through other youth campaigns, youth organizations, groups on Facebook, and things like that. We, I think, had about close to about 12,000 people, and we sent out surveys, and we got so many challenges. Like these were really comprehensive answers that we get back. You know, we didn't have 4 options for people to select from, and some of them weren't explicitly saying, "Look, I don't have time to attend weekly meetings," but that was the idea. That time commitment was the barrier. Yeah. So we consolidated everything together. So that was a very basic primary research that we did, and how we try to reach out to voices from around the world was through reaching out to Rotaractors and young leaders like this and forums from around the world.
Right. But if you're trying to reach people who are already active in a whole bunch of things, doesn't it stand to reason that you would get things like time as a barrier for presenting them with a potential new thing
so One of the things, so another thing that we need to look at is these people are already connected.
Yeah.
They're the ones who, not all of them, but most of them actually attend these weekly meetings. But in these organizations, there are problems like membership drops. In the new era, like about 20 years ago, for a lot of organizations like Rotary, membership drop wasn't a problem. It is now. It is so much as it is now that they're changing their campaigns to bring more people into action. So with the changing landscape, that's what we're trying to do, that when we're integrating technology, we need to realize that we're integrating technology to the future, not like 10 years ago. So those are some of the new challenges that people are getting. They don't have the time anymore. Road track clubs and different, and I keep saying road track because I'm associated with it, they didn't sponsor me. A lot of schools and student organizations in your universities, they are getting their memberships dropped. More people need to be connected. And that's because they do a couple of jobs. They go to school, they have homework and things like that. It's easy for them to just pull out their smartphone and say, I'm free on Saturday 2 to 5. I want to volunteer on Saturday 2 to 5 and never go back to that project again until I'm ready again. You know, that's the kind of culture we are creating.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
And delegates, we only have about 5 more minutes left. Maybe we could ask 2 questions at the same time. Okay, so, okay, can we have this?
Hello everyone, my name is Whitney. I'm from United States International University based in Nairobi. And my question goes to Jack. These computers, are they disability friendly? Because inclusion really matters. And we need students who are differently able to be able to access the computers and use them at the same time.
Okay, and the next questions?
Hey guys, my name's Kurt. Thanks for coming, really inspiring. I wanted to ask about money. How did you guys approach investors, and who did you approach? And are you still working jobs on the side to support yourselves while you're developing these projects? And if you are, when do you plan on quitting?
Okay, I'll start with the second question. I probably can't say when I intend on quitting in case my employer's watching. But I do have a job. I'm full-time at James Cook University in a fundraising role as well. So it is quite difficult to balance the two, but it's certainly, yeah, Lighthouse is my passion. In terms of how to approach investors, we take that pretty seriously. And so for our startup, how we've got to here now, a lot of it has literally been roll up your sleeves, go and collect scrap steel and turn it into cash that then turns into computers. So we've really done some hard yakka fundraising. And I think what's been interesting is lately we've actually had potential sponsors come to us, which is always a nice privilege. But I think when you're asking, you just have to tell a narrative. It's all about just tell the story, don't sell the story, because it sells itself. And the second question about disability-friendly computers, this brings up a really, really important point. So many of the questions here, particularly at Nipuna, have been about the technical aspects of the work. If I could click my fingers and have 3,000 computer labs tomorrow, I would. And if they could be in Pigeon when you opened up the browsing screens, I would. But the fact of the matter is that we're at a level now, so it's certainly something that is on our radar, but once again it comes down to capacity to help, so it's all part of the journey.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, we have had close to about 80% of our donations come from individual people. When we launch the app, next year is when we are planning to have our volunteers as paid staff transition, so everybody's a volunteer right now. And one of the ways that we have cut costs is by being a nonprofit organization in the US, we actually get a lot of systems, virtual systems for free. Google Suites comes for free. PayPal donations comes at a very discounted price. So we get a lot of those, like Slack communication app, the premium account is for free because we're a nonprofit. So a lot of those systems come for free, and that enhances our impact. And all the people who are working right now, engineers, software engineers, country representatives, they're all volunteers, so they are donating their time in kind. I am studying for my master's right now, full-time. Actually, as soon as I go back, I start a new job with my master's, working with nonprofits again. So next year, as things progress, I hope to transition into it after my studies. That's the idea, that I'll make a career out of IVolunteer International.
Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Nipuna. Last 2 questions.
Hi, my name is Axel. I'm studying in Temasek Polytechnic from Singapore, and this question is directed at the both of you. So, a critical element of an organization is the people, right? So, how do you guys manage to persuade people to get on board with you? And how did you manage to get them to believe in your cause and maintain their faith the way through? Yeah.
Thank you. Next questions.
Hi, my name is Theo. I'm from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And I think I can speak on behalf of all the delegates here that we've been greatly inspired by Geraldine Koch's unique take on the whole concept of wealth. So given that you two have only been social entrepreneurs for, say, 2-3 years, as compared to Geraldine's decades of experience, I just wanted to ask the both of you what you think of this whole concept of wealth is to you guys. Thank you.
Concept of.
Okay, I'll speak to both of them. In terms of wealth, I think to me it's almost become a given now that I've just accepted that I will be happy with my life based and assess my life based on the calculus of how many people I've impacted and how deep that impact is. So for me, that's just part of my life now. So it doesn't seem that foreign. It doesn't even seem like a concept anymore. It's just the way it is. As for the bringing people along, you use the word persuade. If you have to persuade people to help, then there's the door. Because like Nipuna is saying, there's 7 billion potential volunteers there, and you want people on there that are not going to quit on you when it gets hard. I've had a really unique journey with this. The majority of my board, and this is starting to change now as we grow, but at first, my board was my mum, my best mate, my ex-girlfriend, and my 3 best mates as well there. And I picked those people because of one word you said there. It was trust. Because I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I knew that I would need people who could trust me, trust my vision, and trust my capabilities. And in terms of how you get people to maintain their confidence in you, I think it's always incorporating their thoughts as well in the decision making, but also literally taking people there and showing them. So the majority of my board now has been to Papua New Guinea. They're part of the family that we have in Papua New Guinea, and they feel it. They could be sitting in this chair telling the story now because they feel it, and that's the key.
Yeah, so for me, I am actually still exploring what wealth is. I am not sure if I've really found a definition for it, but from what I do, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to meet a lot of people and speak to them, learn from them, give back, and as this exploration goes, that's the best I've got. And for persuading the people, I really agree with Jack. I haven't really thought of something and thought, hey, I need this guy, and then gone to search for somebody. Everybody who's in the team right now, I have worked with them on different projects. I've gone to school with them sometimes and been in a student organization. And by these relationships, I've known that there's something that they have, a component that they carry that fits the organization perfectly. So I just made the conversation. And I've always been able to see that component, thankfully, and they've connected right in. Even the people who represent the organization in different countries, we have a US country representative and a Sri Lankan country representative, the CTO and the marketing people, everybody, not just because they are professionals in that area, but also because they've always had that spark in other occasions that we've been together, and it fit right in the organization, and they're all friends. It's the relationship that has worked for me.
Can I just pop in there and just say that I think I speak for Nipuna and myself as well. On that note, if you do want to get involved with anything at all, please connect with us on LinkedIn, follow us on Facebook, and just ask the question, because we're one of you, Yeah.
Right. Shall we give a round of applause to Jack and Nipuna for sharing with us, answering all your questions?